Allegedly, I wasn't going to stream again today. Well, hello, my dumplings. This is again going to be brief, but brief for me is extremely relative, as you all know, since I consider it nothing to do a 3-hour stream about bylaws or whatever. But this will be brief because I literally am about to pass out from exhaustion and just issues. Woof! It's done! So, the second appeal in the Massachusetts matter has just been filed. I think I figured out here. Didn't I figure out before how I was able to put comments in chat? Yes, I want to give you guys the link in case you want to look at it. Let me see if this works. Okay, I don't think that link posted to Facebook, but it did post to Twitch and YouTube. So any of you guys watching there can see it. Any JC members peering in, you will have already gotten it. It was sent directly to your emails and to Mary Root. I'm waiting for the to come from the LNC list. There might not, but I give it a decent chance. They might just remain silent. They are named, but it's pretty freaking obvious they're an interested party. My God, that game they played. So, I think it's 22 pages. It could have been twice that long if I wanted it to. Easily put 30 hours into it. Well, maybe not that much. Easily 20. I started on Friday, so I mean, there's a limited time window, but I hardly sleep. And yeah. And the Massachusetts guys obviously did a shit ton of work because they needed to update the timeline. They probably spent just as much time doing that. Trying to figure out, this is a joke in case Miss Manson is watching. If there's some kind of mathematical formula because she always writes really long opinions. I love them because they leave you very clear where she stands and her reasoning. So it's like a very clear precedent. Like there's no question, like, how'd she come to that conclusion, whether you agree or not? But I'm wondering if there's some mathematical formulation that equates the length of the initial appeal to the length of her opinion. Because our initial appeal about the LNC's decision, I think it was 6 pages. And her response, I think, was 11 or 10, something like that. So this appeal is 22 pages. Let's just see if there's some kind of like correlation. I joke out of respect on this one. She's a brilliant writer. But there's the link. We are going to look at it briefly. And then I'm going to bed. That link is a link to my Google Drive, but that is the official filing. It will be up on LPD eventually. It will be up on the Judicial Committee's drive soon, I'm sure. But I want to point out to you some very interesting issues in this, but briefly, but again, brief to me is very subjective. So let's pull up a share window. I'll keep flipping back between screens because I'd love to answer questions, but I do have to respectfully ask, just because this is, I've been living with this just like ultra focus. Like Wayne even, I mean, God bless him. God, my husband's a saint. He even tried like just ask. I'm like, no questions. I have to be left uninterrupted to commune with this document. So please, I do not have the mental energy to deal with anything other than this, and perhaps the first appeal. In other words, let's please limit the scope to things related to Massachusetts. There's plenty. Listen, I do about 15 streams a day. We could talk about other things some other time. So let's go through this a little bit briefly. I am going to do an extensive show on it. When I say brief, that could be, when I say extensive, boy, you better pack a lunch. But let me find where I can share this on the screen. Okay, I'm completely lost. I really am not with it. So I've been saying this for a while. I have some health issues going on right now. I just can't even believe I did this, knowing what's going on right now. But I think right here is it. Yeah. I promised them I would be with them to the bitter end. And unless I'm dead or hospitalized, and JJ said arrested, I probably could still work on it if I was arrested, probably even hospitalized. But if I'm dead, I don't know. I'm so committed to this cause that I'd come back and haunt the perjurers' asses. Oh, I don't know why that's amusing me. Okay. I'd be like the ghost of JC appeals past. Okay. Is this on the screen? It is. All right. Briefly. And in a 23, holy shit, thought it was 22. Obviously, even though there were multiple people proofreading this, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a few errors. Nothing like the official LNC minutes, though. Okay. Just wanted to show you, though, that the LNC is specifically named as an interested party. Anyway, so you got the factual background, blah, blah, blah. We all know that. There's the updated timeline. This is now a link rather than a document so that it can be continuously supplemented. The opinions on the first appeal are uploaded to Elpedia. And then the relevant procedural background, which you all know, it's, the LNC had meetings, blah, blah, blah. Led to the ruling of the chair, led to the appeal, which was lost. But I want to read something here because this is what's really, really disturbing to me. Like on a fun level, not even having to do with Massachusetts, but just party stability in general. Like I am really deeply troubled by this. Okay. So I'm going to read multiple paragraphs that have to do with this, but this is the issue I'm deeply troubled about. I mean, I'm obviously troubled about what happened in Massachusetts, but that will be resolved one day. This other thing is much more existential to the entire party. It said the last opinion created a glaring contradiction between two 2022 JC decisions, with the Cordio Committee being in a position of clear detrimental reliance and the signatory members being utterly confused as to whether it is or it is not against the bylaws for the LNZ to examine and determine between credible competing leadership claims, or if the party bylaws had somehow changed in the span of the first quarter of 2022. The 2022 majority Delaware opinion, authored by Ms. Matson, quoted below, was not at all unclear or qualified. So I want you to hear this and see how this at all makes sense with the last ruling. She said, the LNC is actually obligated by the bylaws to know who certain affiliate officers are. And if disputes arise, affiliate autonomy is preserved so long as the LNC accurately applies the affiliate's own rules to determine with whom the LNC will work. It would violate affiliate autonomy for the LNC to substitute its own preferences for those of the affiliate and not let the affiliate's own rules answer the question. Okay, I mean, it's like one of these things are not like the other. And I'm going to continue here. You know, another thing here. It says, unless the JC is claiming to have constructively rescinded its prior decision in all but fact, or believes it is reasonable and expected by the membership for it to simply issue absolutely contradictory rulings within the span of months, and that the party can function in such an arguably arbitrary environment in which membership and affiliates cannot know if their rights change from day to day, even within a single term, nay, a single quarter of that term. So, to quote the prior opinion, when the bylaws give the JC jurisdiction, with a phrase such as, the affiliate party may challenge the revocation of its status, then in order to apply this bylaw, the JC must of necessity be able to determine whether or not the appellant is legitimately representing the affiliate. This bylaw would be pointless if the JC were precluded from discerning this reality. Okay. And part of the argument that's made by the people, just in general, this general argument is made, but it's particularly made as justification for there to be an absolutely contradictory ruling in the space of 2 months. We're not talking about last JC. We're talking about the exact same members and the exact same year. It says the appellant realizes that there's no bylaw requiring the JC to follow precedent. However, the Parliamentary Authority of the National Party, RONR, 12th edition, notes that precedence is persuasive and should be followed in like cases. The appellant also believes there is a fiduciary duty to respect decisions made within the same term with the exact same committee members comprising the committee, and this duty does not inure in the same way to decisions farther back in time with entirely different committee members. And the reason that's mentioned is because of one of the opposing opinions, the Oregon decision, which I now know I'm just going to have to do a complete show on or file an amicus on, because I think it's being grossly misapplied. But the Oregon decision was a decade ago or more. It was in 2010 or 2011, more than a decade ago, with absolutely different committee members and only superficially similar. It is not it's the only similarity is that there were 2 competing groups claiming to be board. The similarities end there. And while at one point I did agree with the JC's decision then, I actually end up agreeing with their conclusion, but absolutely disagreeing with their rationale. Back before I really like understood crap the way I do now, like I could barely define a bylaw and I probably didn't even own a copy of Roberts. Yes, there was such a day. Around 2017, I had a certain opinion. I don't hold exactly the same opinion today. I came to the same conclusion, but by different routes. The JC opinion in 2010 basically said that the LNC has to recognize whoever is recognized by the Secretary of State. In the Oregon case, and I'm not saying this to cast judgment on anyone, and actually the person that did this, it's a group I sided with, but for different reasons. Both groups were angling against each other, and both groups, none of them were in complete conformity or even substantial conformity, I don't think, with their bylaws. Part of the reason being that they screwed up their bylaws at convention and amended it in a way that it made it impossible for them to ever achieve quorum at a convention, which is why, please, for the love of baby Jesus, have a parliamentarian review your amendments first. That's a whole other thing. I'm not even going there. That right there shows you a big substantial difference in these two cases. But in Oregon, one group had a meeting that they made sure the other one didn't know about, if I'm remembering correctly, for whatever reason, and won the race to the Secretary of State's office to file as chair. Is that really what we think the Libertarian Party's position be? Whoever can make sure they get to the courthouse first is automatically our affiliate? Now, I know we have to live with the reality that the state exists, but does the state really tell us who our affiliates are? I mean, I do think it's a factor. Massachusetts isn't a recognized party, so that's another reason why the Oregon decision completely does not apply here. There's a lot of different reasons. We're not going to go any more into Oregon. I can tell you there's multiple paths that I reached the same conclusion where I support the group. It changed hands a lot of times, but at the time was known as the Wes Wagner Group. And it's because the Libertarians of Oregon overwhelmingly through a mailed, I'm going to call it a survey. It wasn't exactly a survey, but I'm not trying to get into like I'm not trying to be pedantic here. Overwhelmingly supported the Wes Wagner Group. And who am I to say no, Oregon Libertarians, you know? And that's exactly in similarity what would have happened if the National Party simply disaffiliated Oregon, which I said from the beginning is what they should have done, and let the Oregon Libertarians have in that case, a mass meeting is appropriate, but have them petition with who they approve of. It was a totally different fact pattern. It's like saying, a platypus and a house cat are similar because, they both have 4 legs. It's the reliance and the continuing invocation of Oregon by most people, not by the JC member who did it, who knows a lot about Oregon, but like by certain LNC members, is just completely ignorant. They couldn't have told you what I just told you right now. They wouldn't have even known those things. Now, the JC member who keeps quoting Oregon, he does. It's not ignorance there. Okay. Okay, so I said, yes. All right. I said, otherwise, the members, the affiliates, and the LNC really have no guidance and find themselves floating in midair in the space of months. The same court, in quotes, relitigating the same issue within the span of months and coming to absolutely contradictory findings is wrong. Many things in life are simply obviously not the correct path, absent any rule. Libertarianism will never succeed if the preceding sentence is not self-evidently true and would be indifferent to the effect each person's actions have on others when they have a reasonable and ethical expectation that justice today should not be radically different from justice 2 months ago. And Alicia kind of sort of agreed with me, but not as strongly as I said it. She noted where I bolded, this case is being decided by the same JC members, and then denied binding precedent made by a previous JC. All right. And I said there's a huge difference between the decision of an entirely different JC over a decade ago and a decision made by the same JC 2 months ago. Appellant would hope that we don't need a bylaw to tell us this, and firmly believes that the actual harmed people are left at the curb when the failing side of a prior decision uses a future decision to continue to relitigate what should obviously be a settled issue, even if that side still disagrees. In that case, appellant would argue that no one can be asked to vote expressly against their conscience, but that the appropriate action is to abstain for the sake of continuity and stability within one term. It can be easy to forget that there are real people behind these papers. Okay, before I continue, I want to go back to my stream to see if there is any comments. Let's see here. Adam, so are they saying arbitrary and contradictory rulings are okay? Not in those words, but basically, yeah. At least the no votes are. I mean, there is nuance. I do not want to misrepresent anyone. There is nuance. But the way I see it, I know you're not going to have any comment, Chuck. You can't. I understand that. And you have this in your mailbox. There's probably nothing I'm going to say here that you can't already know. All I can ask you is all I can ask of anybody. You've seen me change my mind on many, many things. I'm asking you to step aside, and there's some things said at the end about your opinion that you might not like. Know that I still love you, and consider you a dear friend, obviously, because we're still on great terms, even though we probably wouldn't have been for the week after my decision, but I got over it. But I'm asking you to just consider the points with an open heart. That's all I can ask. Just as I hope I would do for you. Okay. So let's go back. Timeliness and point of definite constructive disaffiliation. We're not going to go over this a lot because it will just bore you to tears. It's basically pointing out that the really constructive disaffiliation isn't express disaffiliation. That's what's so insidious about it. It's disaffiliating without following the rules to disaffiliate. So a lot of the rules about disaffiliation, including the 6-month thing, don't apply to constructive disaffiliation because the whole point of constructive disaffiliation is that it's trying to be an end run around the rules. To try to apply every single point in that one bylaw to constructive disaffiliation, which it doesn't mention at all, it's express disaffiliation, would be like saying, you want to know what? I'm cool that you eat kosher as long as you eat pork. Like, it's just nonsensical. There could be certain principles that apply, but the bylaw is about express disaffiliation, not constructive disaffiliation. So we're not going to go through that. That's just more. It's kind of like lawyers will understand. You have to argue certain things in order to establish standing and jurisdiction and that sort of thing. So, and it's also explaining, and I know the yes votes, at least 2 of them, maybe, crap, my mind's not exactly clear. I know some of the people on the JC felt that this constructive disaffiliation thing should have been argued in the first appeal. Everyone knows I'm assisting Massachusetts as parliamentarian. I did not then, and I do not now, believe that that cause of action was completely ripe. And I can't, under my professional ethical obligations, author something that I don't stand 100% behind at the time I authored it. And part of this could be due to the fact that I believe that the JC is a last resort. That you try every avenue prior to that. And until it's obvious that it's futile, then you go to the JC. As long as there was the possibility that the ruling of the chair could be overturned by the JC and the LNC could hear the motion in which it could do the right thing, all avenues of peaceful, not that JC's not peaceful, but I'm not thinking of the right word, but internal, and I know the JC's internal too, but it's kind of like a body that sits outside of everything. At least it's supposed to. As Alicia said in her opinion, it's not supposed to be political. I think that's kind of impossible, but it is an aspirational goal. Before running to the JC, like if you're having a fight, with your sister, before you run and tell mom, you try to work it out. And the Cordio Committee had been trying to do this the whole time. And it's my position that it became futile once that opportunity to overrule the LNC and make them actually do their job. Because I feel bad that the JC now has, if we win on this, actually has to do the LNC's job. And that is why the entire issue of constructive disaffiliation was not argued at that time, even though in one sense it did exist. Ms. Matson correctly argued, I believe, in the Delaware opinion, that constructive disaffiliation isn't a point in time. It's a process that can take that by necessity takes time because it's not express. It has to be a pattern and practice. And in the Delaware decision, she said it was a pattern and practice over the course of over several months. Exact same thing here. And I was relying upon that. And I still believe that. Okay, let's continue. All right, I want to go past all of that. And I just want to show you something that just personally offends me. I mean, there's an argument here as well, but I'm going off script. This does have to do with the appeal, but what I'm going to say right now has nothing to do with the appeal. Beth Vest, as an LNC member, basically calling Mary Roort stupid is one of the most offensive things I have ever read. And if the LNC was at all consistent in its application of its alleged social media policy that it weaponized against me, she's a regional alternate. LNC cannot remove her, but they can censure her. This is atrocious. It's going to move past that. But I love how this Longstreth was specifically rebutted in a rare social media appearance by Alicia Matson. She never posts on social media. So then we continue. Okay. Point number 6. It is irrelevant, ultimately, even if it's desirable for it to be before this convention, it's ultimately irrelevant because the Judicial Committee never ceases to exist. Its membership may change. There's always a Judicial Committee. There's nothing in our bylaws that say everything has to, as far as I'm aware, I'm sure the JC will correct me if I'm wrong, that says pending items can't be carried over. So it's ultimately irrelevant. Ideal, but ultimately irrelevant. And basically, the last sentence is just stating the reality. No matter what happens, there will still be an actionable item before the JC until this issue is resolved. And both claimants have resolved to persevere until it is. And then arguments drawn from background facts and procedural patterns. There's the quote from Matson earlier, which basically has just said this was a Mises Caucus witch hunt, and the people doing so just don't understand how political movements work. I made that argument earlier. I'm not going to repeat it. Okay, let's, then we go in and we start arguing the procedure, making it obvious that what I call here the Shade Committee did was wrong. And I actually don't think anyone on the JC disagrees with that, which, and it's perhaps that fact that disturbs me most of all. That we as libertarians can think, well, I'm going to get to this point. We're not going to go through all of this because I actually don't think anybody but the purgers disagree. And yeah, there's the infamous, the petition itself is an act of aggression. So we're going to skip through all of this for right now. Something that's not brought up very often is not only was the expulsion vote illegitimate under the governing documents, just as they were, the board that voted on them, 2 of the members that voted were disqualified from holding those positions. And if that claim is correct, there wasn't a 9-person state committee. There was a 7-person state committee. And so then you'd have to strike 2 of the votes. And once you do that, you do not have 2/3 of the entire state committee, which is required to expel or remove members of the state committee. If members of the state committee were illegitimately removed from their positions, that is a continuing breach of the bylaws. And any decisions made by that committee without their votes is void ab initio. And we go on more like this. So now we start getting into some things. Has the LNC in fact constructively disaffiliated? Oh, I made a typo here. I'm going to, I think everyone will understand this. I'm going to ask Andrew that should say Cordio Committee, not Graham Committee. Oh, none of us caught that. I'm going to send a note to the JC on point 8. I'm glad I went over this. Super not feeling well. I mean, the wording makes it clear, but ooh, I don't know how any of us did not catch that. So I noted in the Delaware opinion that Ms. Matson noted that merely the fact that in Delaware, that McVeigh was given data wasn't particularly persuasive because it's not just affiliates who are given data. So I wanted to address that head on because she's right, but that's incomplete because there's an LNC policy manual provision that deals specifically with giving data to affiliates that has applicability that doesn't apply to other groups that may get our data. And then talks about how Richard Longstreth attempted to interfere with the Credentials Committee. Says any claim that either the LNC or the JC can figure out if the LNC is engaging in bylaws prohibited constructive disaffiliation turns the bylaws into an incoherent mess in their entirety, as they comprise much more than the phrase shall not abridge the autonomy of an affiliate, which keeps getting repeated and misquoted as shall not interfere in the autonomy of the affiliate, like some kind of magic incantation that instantly makes all of the obvious glaring contradictions disappear. It is ironic to point out that the LNC cannot know if they are abridging the autonomy of an affiliate unless they know basic identifying facts about the human beings that are the personal contacts between the LNC and the affiliated entity. Appellant would note again that the de facto LNC recognition of the Shade Committee and the Graham Committee is in direct conflict with the express recognition of the Cordio Committee by the Libertarian parties of Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, and Vermont via the execution of the 2022 through 2024 Region 8 agreement with the Cordio Board and the LAMA sub-affiliates of Pioneer Valley, South Shore, Worcester, I know I screwed that up, and Middlesex. And yet another irony. The off-cited bylaw that the autonomy of an affiliate shall not be abridged by the LNC says more than just that. It also includes a prohibition on abridging the autonomy of sub-affiliate parties. Ensnared by their own Kafka trap, the LNC is now abridging the autonomy of the above sub-affiliates by presuming to tell them which state committee they must recognize as legitimate if they are consistent. Now, here's the part I wanted to spend the majority of time on. It is clear that there is a rift on the JC on how to interpret the national. Appellant does not believe there is such a rift in the bylaws properly interpreted or in the party at large to whom even the bylaws are answerable as written. And it quotes something from the earlier reading, not going to requote that. And this paragraph is important. It has been said by persons of good faith, it's not just one person, that the bylaws must be obeyed even if they lead to a conclusion that is patently unjust. That reduces the purpose and context of the bylaws to a grotesquerie. These are not bylaws floating abstractly in space. They are bylaws written in a libertarian context by libertarians to govern a libertarian organization and culture. To ignore that is like reading texts which are heavily steeped in a specific ethnic culture with its own idioms and sensibilities through a distinctly modern majority American lens, which will lead to absurd interpretations. This often happens, and I'm not taking a side on like, is there a God or not? Is the Bible true or not? But a lot of the real, what I like to call fundamentalist atheists, who are just as bad as fundamentalist Christians, a lot of their criticisms of the Bible is because they're reading ancient idioms hyperliterally, which the people to whom the book was written would never read it. Like the imagery of sun, moon, and stars, they don't realize that in ancient Near East culture, I've written a whole book on this, refers symbolically to governing authorities. And we even see that today on the flags of countries, which often have astrological symbols, like the stars in the American flag, like the rising sun, like the crescent moon. I mean, they're everywhere because the ancients believed that our lives were controlled. Some people today still believe that by what they saw in the heavens. So, for instance, in the Bible, when it says the sun shall stop shining, and things like that, it's talking about the fall of an empire. Obviously, it is, because the Bible also says in times of blessing, the sun will give forth its light, like I think it says like 100-fold. Does anyone in here think that is a good thing? Or that no matter how technologically unadvanced ancient culture was, that they didn't realize that if the sun was 100 times hotter, that would not be a good thing? Just saying. I said, this is the art. Okay. No one would want some future interpreter of our culture to think we put kennels on our head every time it rained heavily. This is the art and science of exegesis. If there are two possible interpretations of libertarian governing documents, one of which leads not only to injustice, but the type of injustice that is particularly loathsome to libertarians, like thinking the highest authorities in the National Party have to leave people who are victims of disenfranchisement, collectivist purges, and rank authoritarianism without any recourse for justice because of some magical 6-month window where those in power can indulge in all of these things with impunity analogous to the purge. And the other allows justice. The one that is patently unjust is monstrously and obviously incorrect as a perversion of everything we stand for, and the other is correct. There are obviously these two possible interpretations, as has been argued by highly intelligent people of good faith. The absurd and unjust interpretation is starkly wrong, despite being superficially plausible. Okay, here's the part. If you're still here, Chuck, you're probably not. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I went back to the chat screen here. Okay. Most of the information appellant wished to reference from the JC opinion on the first appeal have been incorporated above, but there are still some that don't fit neatly elsewhere but still need to be addressed. JC member Moulton appears to blame the petitioning members for their own wrongful expulsion because the Mises Caucus would almost certainly have succeeded in taking over Lama if it waited 2 months for the regularly scheduled state convention. Unfortunately, a lack of patience and basic political etiquette led them to jump the gun, employing a probably legitimate but incredibly controversial special convention procedure to wrest control of the organization slightly early. Said Dr. Moulton appears to be forgetting multiple key facts. More than half of the petitioning members had nothing to do with the Mises Caucus and have stated their motivations, which directly contradicts his statement. The Shade Committee had engaged in what they saw as increasingly authoritarian actions, starting with the expulsion of a member for quote-unquote word aggression. They stated that social media trolling was actual aggression, and then passing a quote-unquote code of conduct, which seemed to them to be designed to be used as a weapon to conduct more expulsions. Expelled members cannot vote. With all due respect to Dr. Moulton, appellant finds this statement incredibly myopic and demonstrates a failure to listen to what the petitioning members have actually said, unless he does not believe they are truthful. But if that is the case, then say it outright. Further, this statement was simply downright inappropriate to say over 200 National Party members. Chair Bill U is also correct that petitioners have not alleged any bylaw was violated to trigger an avenue for appeal under LP Bylaw 712. In fact, it is the reverse. Petitioners are annoyed that the LNC is actually following its bylaws. Okay, I'm going to go back into my own mode here right now to say I was one of the petitioners, and that's false. That was an incredibly reckless thing to say. It might be true of some of them. I don't know. I don't know every single person who signed the petition. I know me, and I probably know about 70 of them. And that statement is just false. It is understandable that frustrations and emotions run high in these matters. And often it becomes necessary to come to distasteful conclusions about motives of individuals or smaller groups. But a collectivist statement about the motives of over 200 dues-paying members of this party should never have been made. Appellant believes this was a statement made in haste, as we can all do, rather than presuming the worst. In a few short years, when this issue is long settled, the wounds inflicted can live on. Additionally, Dr. Moulton claims that state affiliates are lining up to submit their internal bylaw and leadership disputes to the Libertarian National Committee and to the Judicial Committee, to which the appellant asks, who? I mean, I think it's pretty well known now that I've kind of been the go-to person on these sorts of things. And I can tell you, there's no line. There just isn't. May there be in the future? I don't know. But that's just also not true. Unless I don't know about it. Okay. All right, Chuck, if you're, that's it. That's it. Please don't be mad at me. Or if you are, you know, I was mad at you for a while too. Okay. Finally, the opinion of D. Frank Robinson, a revered and beloved figure in this party, seemed to be about something that was never argued by any of the interested parties thus far. No one has claimed this was an express disaffiliation. And if the LNC is not allowed to recognize legitimate changes in leadership in the 6 months prior to the national convention, then any affiliate which has its conventions in that time frame cannot have its elections recognized. Mr. Robinson may rebut that recognizing the results of conventions is routine. Where does it say that in the bylaws? Is the LNC just to take the word of Xi Jinping, to use an example from Ms. Matson, that they are the newly elected chair if they happen to notify the LNC before anyone else can? This is the equivalent of Ms. Matson's pointed question to Will McVeigh, whether white text giving meeting details on a white background would constitute valid notice. If our interpretation of our bylaws leads to conclusions that there is a 6-month open season for leadership to do as it pleases and violating express member rights, there is something flawed about our interpretation, no matter what bona fides we have in the party formation and the gratefulness that so many members feel. Okay, that's all I really want to go over there. Chuck, I linked to it in, hold on one second, I want to show you. I do not believe that I quoted you out of context, and I know you can't really debate with me here. We can talk about it either after Reno or at a hearing. I don't know. At some point, how do I put this? Chuck, I respect you enough that I do not want to put you in an ethically uncomfortable position. I respect, actually, you've had probably more discretion than nearly anyone on the JC about inappropriately commenting on things. And I don't ever want to put you in a compromised position. But I want to show members because Chuck has said that the context cures that statement. I don't believe it does. Reasonable people can disagree, I suppose. Here, I'll stick it in chat. Are the opinions? I think in the PDF, Chuck's is the last. No, D. Frank's is the last one. I don't know. It's towards the end. Let me find where I can put this. Or read for yourself. Don't trust me. Don't ever trust me when it's things that you can go look at yourself. It uploaded to Lpedia, but it's not like on any page. So unless you had that link, you wouldn't be able to find it, which is why I stuck it there. I'm really, really behind in indexing these documents. The Delaware appeal opinion still isn't indexed. So, yeah, there it is. Go, please go read it for yourself and come to your own conclusions. I also want to make something clear here, which should be obvious. Well, maybe it's not. I obviously had a large hand in writing the appeal because I am working as the parliamentarian for Brody Elwood, who granted me permission to work also with Andrew Cordio because they share interests. However, the positions have all been thoroughly reviewed by the people it's speaking for. This isn't. Oh, I know you called out the other side in the very next sentence. You did a both sides thing. And I'm sorry. That's wrong. The Cordio group is completely fucking innocent. But yeah, no, you did call out the other side. I just didn't feel that was relevant because I think nearly everyone knows the other side is bad. You really did a both sides thing. That's just my opinion. But no, you absolutely did call out the other side. Without a doubt. Okay. I think that's it. I'm not sure. I'm seeing if there's any other chats I need to deal with. Yeah, that's a good point, Brody. That wasn't put, we could have made this 40 pages. And again, there'll be supplements. There'll be responses to replies and whatever, which I'm trying to keep much more to a minimum, at least in the little group we control. Because annoying the JC does no good. And I think they made that clear in multiple of the opinions to cut it out. And, but if it becomes relevant, this was not an ambush. And they were told why. The Shade Committee, which was going to be out of power in a few short months, could have simply said, you know what? How about we, let the members decide at convention about this code of conduct thing, which is grotesque. They could have done that, is what they should have done. Since it's something that was going to be imposed on the members. I don't think you had all the facts, Chuck, and that could be, you know, partially due to the fact that the timeline of events in this matter is long with the supporting documents because, God, there's just been so much that happened. What seems to happen in this party, and I hate to tell you, the JC kind of did this to me, in my opinion, as well. There's a direct parallel. If you don't tell people things that you know, you're accused of ambush and Machiavellian maneuvers. And if you do, it's kind of like, well, you got what was coming to you. Because that was the response to my complaints about the unethical. I didn't say for sure it was against the rules. I said, I don't think we need a rule for every piece of behavior to tell us what's right and wrong. The unethical sneaking behind Stephen Nicole's back of David Sexton, what was said in the JC opinions is she told the LNC Nicola was leaving. It was basically like, your own fault. You should have kept that secret. I don't operate like that, and I never will. And it will bite me in the ass sometime. But I can look myself in the mirror knowing that unless, because actually at that time, I actually did believe I was going to get a fair hearing. If I had known the result was predetermined, I would have done things differently, but I did not believe that at the time. It's the Kafka trap. It really is. Like so many things about what's going on in the party right now is one big Kafka trap. And if it continues, the party cannot survive. And this is just a statement. It's not saying, "Ooh, we're at impending doom." It's a very qualified statement that if this pattern continues of this periods of just entire uncertainty as to what your rights are and what the highest judicial body will rule, like you can't count at all on a ruling that was just 2 months ago. If that continues, one time of that happening, fine. I mean, it's not fine, but I mean, it's not apocalyptic. It is to the people involved, though, because there's real people involved here that were expelled. But if this practice kept going, no society could survive that. And I don't mean society in the Roberts way. I mean society in the human civilization way. Laws, rules, rights, and things cannot be applied arbitrarily. What I was hoping for in the nay votes was something that even attempted, and crap, this is probably an argument I should have put in the appeal. It will be in a supplement. Is something that even attempted to distinguish the two cases 2 months apart in order to justify a contradictory ruling. I was open to see that. But instead, it was basically, well, I lost the first one. Let's see if I can win this one. It's not the way you, in my opinion, it's not the way you treat members. I know as I've said a million times, as much as anyone else in the party, what it's like to be on the losing side of a decision. The other day, like I broke down in tears telling you all how being on the losing side of a decision will follow me the rest of my professional career life. But that would not give me the authority, even if there's no rule against it, to take another case and somehow get, I don't want to use the word revenge because it has too much negative connotations, but to continue to relitigate it because it treats, in my opinion, the new people involved who are completely innocent of, anything to do with the other decision. It uses them as a tool to just keep trying to get your way on a settled issue. If there was some distinguishment in facts between the two cases, okay. But in fact, there almost seemed, there might even been expressly, but like my memory's not so good right now. I mean, the distinct impression I got, and there might have been an express statement, was a concession. There is no distinguishment. It's just we lost that time, so we're going to try to win this time. And I'm sorry, that's not the fair way to treat the people in Massachusetts. It's just not. They had every right to think that there would be consistency over the course of 2 months. That's just unfathomable to me. Utterly. This isn't an act. And it could be just a fundamental disagreement on our ultimate authority. Like I argued earlier. To me, our ultimate authority is the cause that the bylaws were written to serve, which is libertarianism. And if any conclusion runs directly contrary to principles of libertarianism, like fairness, anti-collectivism, anti-authoritarianism, denial of due process, though I'm hearkening back to my own case, we've lost our way, in my opinion. I'm a libertarian first. And I'm not claiming that someone who disagrees with me is a bad libertarian. I'm just saying we're a different kind of libertarian. And there's a lot of that. Just the other night, we were talking about different libertarian groundings, consequentialism, utilitarianism. Well, I have a whole argument there, but that's just a whole other thing, but whatever. That all of us come from different groundings for our ethics, deontological, whatever it might be. Just different kinds. But I can tell you, I interpret everything through a libertarian lens. Now, there would be a quandary. And since I haven't faced it yet, I don't really know what I would do because I'd have to see the fact patterns. There would be a quandary if faced with a circumstance in which you are looking at a bylaw and there were not 2 or more possible interpretations. And clearly there are here, because we have some of the brightest people in this party who have served on judicial committees. To me, it's clear that highly intelligent people, as I said, of good faith, think there are two possible interpretations. One's unjust and one's not. That settles the issue for me. I would be in a bit of a pickle, I think, if there really wasn't any other plausible interpretation other than an unjust one. We have never been in that position as a party, and that would be a problem. But that's not the situation here. All right, any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to go. As I've been hinting at, some people know the specifics. I've got a personal medical situation that I need to deal with. I may disappear for a little while. When I say a little while, it's like my social media fast. It's kind of like the Pirates Code, suggestions. We're talking, maybe a week, maybe 3-4 days. But now that I've discharged, at least for right now, my duty to people who are counting on me, I now got to go take care of myself. Though if something comes up in this that I have to respond to, yeah, I'll do it, because I made a promise and I keep my word. Not claiming that other people don't. I'm just saying it's kind of like with Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind, that we make a mistake where we think people who disagree are just bad people. No, they just have different hierarchy of values. And my hierarchy of values, I think, is pretty blatant. Justice. No, and that's not claiming that other people don't care about justice. They just might rank something higher. And there's nothing particularly. I think we need to start to learn to stop, just realizing, there are bad people in this world, quite obviously, like people who purge 47 people from the Massachusetts party. Undoubtedly bad people. But most of the time, it's just people who disagree. But duty, justice, promise keeping, loyalty are my top values. Some other people may say fraternity, or I don't know. There's all different. There's Jonathan Haidt's book is fantastic, but those are mine. So a long way of saying, yeah, I'll fulfill my duty, but hopefully I'll have a little while to take care of myself for a bit. But I need to send a short corrective email to the JC. And funny, reading through that, only found that one typo, and I know how it happened. That title used to be something else. That title changed midstream, and it used to talk about the Graham Committee. And when I changed the paragraphs, we didn't notice. God, there's so many freaking committees in this thing. You have the Shade Committee, the Graham Committee, the Cordio Committee. And that's just going to bug me to no end until I correct that. And none of us caught it. My God, I want to kick myself. All right, everyone. I hope you have an awesome night. I hope you found this educational. I know there are people out there I'm trying to say this, I'm not trying to make you sound cold-hearted, but you've got your own things going on in your life, and you really just don't have the bandwidth right now to care too deeply about what's going on in Massachusetts. I mean, like right now, Massachusetts has been my top priority, and some people would go, "Have you given a thought to the war?" And I'd be like, "Honestly, no. I've been given a thought to this 23-page appeal." So I'm not judging you. Everyone's got their things going on in their life. But hopefully, even if this ain't your thing right now, this particular issue, you've learned something about the internal processes of the party, disputes and how they're handled, and the way things are filed. And I do think Chuck and I, in comments, model how to disagree agreeably and that sort of thing. All right, I'm going to go now because I am rambling a bit. Oh my God. Was this really an hour? That's brief for me. I better shut up now or it'll be 3 hours. Y'all have a good night.